This is getting to the point we cannot trust the data. And now here they are admitting it. Oh, yeah, we lied. Oh, that was weird. You mean just the 90 days prior to the election, you might have fabricated some numbers? That's weird, Chip.
Welcome to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. Well, David, I don't want to spend too much time on this because we're going to dedicate the whole second segment of the program to the Patriotic Parade, but I'm so excited. Mike Schudel and I will be announcing the parade this year. Just give us a quick 30 seconds. What got you involved with Patriotic Productions, and what? Because you're going to be down there for the parade.
Yeah. So Bill and his wife, asked us to participate, and I think that was from they followed us like with America's Wall of Honor, which we've been participating with for years, and know that we were patriotic in nature, and so asked us to starting to support this. And this is what, our fourth year now, or I can't remember, but anyway, most of the years we've been on board. They've been doing it for over 5 or whatever. But it's a fantastic event. It's a great parade to celebrate patriotism, which, has almost been not allowed, it seems like, in our country. So I think it's on an upswing. And, there's nothing better, especially if you got little ones, little grandkids or kids, small kids. Parades are a lot of fun. I mean, I remember going as a kid, holding a flag while all the floats go by. And here it's going to be all floats and people walking by that are all tied to patriotism and to service people that have serviced all our wars, et cetera.
Well, so it's a rolling history lesson, too, because you've got people, including kids, in period costumes and reenactors and so forth, all the different wars, all the main epics of American history.
I think it's great. Fantastic. I mean, I was a kid. You would go to Boy Scouts. You would go to parades. This is the normal thing. And, maybe it's making a comeback, which would be fantastic to see.
Well, more on that in the second segment. Now, it isn't often, David, that Donald Trump gets knocked off the front page of the newspaper, so to speak, but it happened last week when a new pope was elected. Now, we actually have a question in our Q&A today, David, about that, so hold your thoughts.
All right.
Keep your powder dry, but we will want to get your take on that. But something pretty big happened that normally would have dominated the news cycle last week.
Well, I just want to put it out there that I mean, you would have lost this bet, if you would have bet Chicago Bears get a quarterback that throws for 4,000 yards or Chicago gets a pope first. Which one happened first, right?
Well, and for we local Catholics, our new archbishop also is from Chicago, so Chicago's on quite a roll here lately. More on that to come on the pope, but something big did happen in international relations, and Donald Trump right in the middle of it. David, here's the CNBC headline. U.S.-UK, it's United Kingdom, of course, U.S.-UK trade deal from Ford to McLaren, steel to beef, impact to be limited, says freight CEO. This is Andy Abbott of Atlantic Container Line. He kind of threw cold water on it, said, well, because the market liked it. There was a market rally. He said, it's based on smoke and mirrors. David, what is your take on this trade deal taking shape between the United States and the United Kingdom?
Well, yeah, it's not that big a deal. They're not that big of an economic impact to begin with as a trading partner. Okay. We are aligned on a lot of things, the UK, obviously, from our founding, et cetera. But economically, we don't import a great deal of goods relative to other countries we import stuff from. And the deal has a lot of, I wouldn't say it's smoke and mirrors, but it was sold really well, right? And again, the market was desperate for something to say, all right, they are actually achieving trade deals. They're knocking them down like they've been talking about. So any details being released, when this one came out, it's the first one to actually have at least a decent amount of details lined up. But there's still tariffs, right? And there's still going to be some negative headwinds caused from this. And so the freight CEO you're speaking of was right, because it's going to hinder shipments, which is what we see in the data.
Well, now there was another interesting development. I should note, we're recording this show on Monday, May 12th. We usually do it on Wednesdays, but for scheduling reasons, we need to do it. And this was a late-breaking development. Stocks climb on China-U.S. trade progress. That's a Fox Business headline. Is the Trump strategy regarding tariffs finally being vindicated here? China's coming to the table?
They are. And I've been telling for a while here that China is in much dire straits compared to the U.S.
China needs us more than we need China.
They do. And so they came to the table. But again, this deal does not have that many true details lined up in it. And so I thought it was interesting is because this deal got announced Sunday. And then when the futures opened up, and they started scrolling and getting higher and higher and higher. In other words, this is the futures market betting that you're going to have a strong open. And of course, we had a very strong open this morning on Monday morning, May 12th. The question is, where will we be at the end of this week? When you hear this radio show, I will know this number, but not at this recording.
Yeah.
That's what we look at is data and some of the weekly flows, because sometimes there's this sell the news type of event, right? You buy the idea and then you sell once it actually gets to fruition. What we also thought was interesting is literally within hours of that, Trump then put out a tweet, that was saying he was going to put an executive order on pharmaceutical companies, drug companies in particular.
Trump to cut drug prices by more than half, at least, with a pharmaceutical executive order. Some of this language, I thought, is this Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders talking? The Americans are getting ripped off. We got to be fair. What's your take on it?
So while the market was up, it's a couple-fold, right? So while the market was up, we saw stocks like Eli Lilly, some of the market leaders as of recently, getting hit pretty hard on this, because this means that they could be taken on the chin, and this would be your big pharma, right? Merck, GlaxoSmithKline, so et cetera. And so what we want to figure out is what's the reality here. So by his executive order, what he's saying, Chip, is, hey, we're not going to pay for the rest of the world, which I agree with. The philosophy of, if you don't know, all the R&D that big pharma puts, which is about $2 billion per drug, to get it to market. So they spend money they deserve in a capitalistic society to be able to price their drug to get recouped on their investment. There's a couple of ways to make this much easier. They start the patent, just so you know, these patents typically run 20 years in the pharmaceutical world, but they start the patent the day you discover and patent the drug, Chip, but it might take you another 12 years to get it to market, right? Through clinical trials, testings, there's multiple phases.
So it's still not paying off for
right.
you.
Well, they do. They have a 6 to 8 year window to get all their money back, right?
Okay.
They've been spending R&D and scientists research. So that's why these prices are to the moon. Now, look, I mean, I know exactly what's going on in my whole household right now. Spending a lot of money on some therapeutics, et cetera. So here's the deal. The rest of the world gets contract pricing, right? And they have a socialist state of medicine. So some countries in the EU are paying $9 for a product you are paying $900 for.
Oh, so we're getting gouged here.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So what
All
he's
right.
doing is either those other countries are going to have to step up and pay more, or our pharmaceutical companies are going to have to take less here to deal with the government, because he's going to say, look, we're going to, any government entity that's buying these drugs, so Medicare, Medicaid, et cetera, has to get the contractually best price. What's wrong with that? Not only, though, inside our borders, but outside as well.
Yes. Okay.
So I believe what you're going to see is these companies are going to have to renegotiate their contracts with other countries and make them pay more, and they're going to have to squeeze their margin down. So they're going to probably do a mix of both. We don't know how the reaction is going to be, but as you and I, as John Q. taxpayer, and as American consumers, this is a win.
So it's not a socialist communist rant against big pharma. It's, hey, big pharma.
Stop taking all the blood from one of the honeypots, which is the American consumer. Right.
You need to make money on this. You need to make a profit. We understand. Let's just make sure everybody's paying a fair share, bearing some of the burden for this.
Most people don't understand the full cost of healthcare, because they get their healthcare, or 80% of Americans get their healthcare through their employer, right?
Okay.
Very common. And you don't understand how much your employer pays on your behalf. Most employers are paying over 70% of the freight of your healthcare expenditure. So when you pay that payroll deduction to sign up for the benefits, you're paying a small piece of it. And we went through 2 over 30% back-to-back rate increases on our group plan here the last couple of years, and I ended up changing to a different style plan. Now you guys get to buy your own insurance, and I give you a tax-free reimbursement called an ICRA, right? I had to make adjustments as a small employer to be able to afford to continue even giving the benefit, because here's the thing, Chip. If you go back to 2010, it was single digits of that healthcare expense went to the pharmaceutical part of the healthcare. It's at like almost 30% now. So now, and just look at TV commercials. 3 out of 5 commercials when you're watching sports on the weekend, the only TV I really watch is a pharmaceutical commercial. Ask your doctor about so-and-so. And then they list off 65 different things that could happen to you. I'm
side
like,
effects.
What does that really do? Is it really net benefit? But anyway, a joke. But listen, pharmaceuticals have been pushing marketing, et cetera. And who's paying for that marketing? It's not cheap. Right. You and I are. And so now he's trying to spread the load around. Okay. And again, RFK even wants to stop them from advertising. We'll see how that works out. But bottom line, hopefully that does drive the end user price down, and it drives the cost of our government's medical spending down, which is over 50% of all healthcare expenditures in the United States today.
Going to squeeze in a quick one here, David. You sent the team, this is more of a grassroots economic indicator, I guess, but you sent the team some data about Uber, that Uber was being touted as a hot stock because it won't be affected by tariffs, but an 18% miss in revenues? Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah, so Uber, just so you know, this was one of the stocks that some analysts and TV talking heads were like, hey, this is the anti-tariff stock you should buy, right? Because they're not going to be affected by tariffs, right? They're not importing. They're drivers here, cars are already here. So why would their stock get hit? Well, user demand is dropping significantly on Uber, and that has to do with a lot less travel. I know I use Uber personally when I'll be on a plane tomorrow, right? And when I get off, typically to get me to my hotel or speaking engagement, whenever I jump into an Uber, it's a lot easier and more effective than rental cars. I do rent a car occasionally, but nowhere near as often as I used to.
So Uber's still in demand, so what happened?
Well, their demand is dropping, though, and this is showing you that. Their demand is drying up. People are, and the other thing is people used to use them for, hey, I'll just Uber over to somebody's house for, a collected night out in the town. I'm like, I can't really afford that. In other words, we're cutting back. You can see the consumers cutting back on discretionary spending, and this is evidence. So again, while the markets are flying high on this idea of trade deals, it may end up being a sell the news event because the economy is not really any healthier today than it was just 2 weeks ago.
Up next, it has become a signature event in the annual cultural landscape of Omaha. It's the Memorial Day weekend Patriotic Parade. It's 1 week away, and the organizer, Bill Williams, joins us next on Retire Smart with David Brooks. Welcome back to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. Culturally, summer begins Memorial Day weekend, and Omaha now has an annual burst of patriotism to kick off the summer season, the Patriotic Parade. The main organizer is with us today. David, please welcome Bill Williams of Patriotic Productions.
Thank you, Chip. Yes, joining me in the studio is our good friend Bill, who's got a great opportunity for you, if you are patriotic like me, to come out this Memorial Day weekend and walk around awesome downtown Omaha. Bill, how we doing, brother?
Wonderful. Glad to be here, David.
So, Bill, you and your wife, this is Bill Williams. Bill, you guys run Patriotic Productions, which is a charity. You also help us with the Gold Star flights. You've been doing that for...
We did the honor flights.
The honor flights,
We did 13 flights that took 3,500 Nebraska veterans to D.C.
Man, that's awesome.
To see their memorials. So 7 World War II, 2 Korea, 2 Vietnam, an all-female flight, which was unique. So that was female...
I didn't know about that.
Female pilots, female flight attendants, all veterans, female. The oldest was 98. Youngest 27 Iraq veteran, and all the helpers on board. Our special guest was Loretta Swit, if you remember her.
Oh, yeah, MASH.
Hot Lips Houlihan from MASH, so she was on the flight.
I'm old enough for that one, for sure.
And then the final one was about 5 years ago, was Purple Heart recipient, so we wrapped that up. We're also the creators of Remembering Our Fallen. We have a national memorial that travels the country of 5,500 of the fallen in the war on terror since 9/11. It's the only memorial like it. It's been everywhere from New York City, Veterans Day, to Rose Parade twice. And so our mission is that the fallen from Iraq and Afghanistan will not be forgotten.
Well, that's an awesome mission. Our veterans deserve every bit of praise that we can give them. Our country has not always treated them justly, I guess. I'll just put it that way. My dad is a combat Marine. Actually, he was in combat way back Bay of Pigs.
Wow.
And then my younger brother, Steve, actually saw combat during the first Gulf War. And so proud of them for serving. I've never served. I would have been a medical rejection. I unfortunately lost my knee at a pretty young age in a car accident, but so proud for all those that serve, and so proud to help support you guys supporting our veterans, which we've been blessed to be able to support you guys for several years now. So let's talk about the upcoming Patriotic Parade and kind of what's going on. Let's give people the when and where, all the important stuff here.
All right. Well, the parade, this will be our 5th one, and Retire Smart's been with us almost all of those. Draws about 10,000. It's on Saturday morning, May 24th at 10 a.m. Starts at 10th and Jackson, which is the street right south of the Embassy Suites. And we have over 100 entries. Our special guests this year are Pat Boone and Ann Margaret, who will be in an event the night before at the Relevant Center. Anybody who's interested in that can go to patrioticproductions, plural.org. for
and
ticket
they put on
information.
great events out there at the Relevant. I've done several events out there.
Great facility. And then they'll be riding in a 1957 Bel Air convertible on Saturday morning. Chevrolet was the sponsor for Pat's television show 57 to 60.
Wow.
And thus we came up with this 57 Bel Air that they'll ride.
I was literally getting coffee, about to walk in the studio, and a jingle popped in my head, and I knew I was coming to talk about Patriotic. You remember baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet.
Yep.
You know, and so
see
that's
the
pretty
Chevrolet, or see the USA and a Chevrolet.
Yeah. So just so you know, I own several Fords, but anyway.
So that's on Saturday. So we have 3 events. We have Friday night with Pat Boone and Margaret. And then we have the parade on Saturday morning. We're also the new organizers of Memorial Day at Memorial Park. So we're redoing that, turning it upside down. We're going to put a 90-foot tent on the flat down by Dodge.
Okay,
Free
nice.
pancakes, 8 to 9:30. Skydivers dropping in with the colors at 9:45. The ceremony will be no politicians. It's going to be a whole different, using reenactors. Representing fallen and the origination of Decoration Day, which we now know as Memorial Day.
So we grew up in Northern Virginia, and reenactments were a regular thing. Civil War. So I mean, we literally had, you could dig bullets out of our farm, the trees on our farm, and sell them to the souvenir shop that would then sell them to tourists there. So I think reenactments are awesome. If you've never seen that stuff and how authentic these guys. Well, I mean, even the parade. What I was blown away with last year, which was the first year we walked in it, we're going to be walking in the parade with it this year. And by the way, we're going to be carrying the Purple Heart Memorial.
You'll be sponsoring, you're sponsoring the Purple Heart, which is a 22-foot tall Purple Heart. And so Retire Smart, including you, employees will be walking along with
Absolutely.
it.
And what I loved about the parade is before it even launched, just walking down the line, you've got representation from every war. I mean, and I mean, the amount of people, like you said, over 100 entrants. It's some really neat stuff to see. I mean, that 57 Chevy's worth showing up for just by itself, but it's really something visually spectacular to see. These are people that love their country, that want to honor its heritage, and you've got them from all different units, Iowa, Nebraska, all represented, right? How do you go about getting these entrants?
Well, we just keep working it. You know, we broke it into a history lesson. So we have banners beginning with Birth of a Nation to Civil War, Western Expansion, World War I, World War II, Korean War, Life in America in the 50s, Vietnam War, Life in America in the 60s, and War on Terror. So behind each of those banners are the appropriate vehicles, wagons, horses, costume, children, from Betsy Ross to Eisenhower. So it's fun to put it together, and people appreciate it, I think. So.
All right, so let's go over logistically here. Friday night, they can go to the Relevant, and there you're going to have an event where they're going to hear from Pat Boone and Ann Margaret on stage.
Yeah, Pat Boone and Ann Margaret, this is the first time they have performed together since the movie State Fair in 1962.
Wow, my mom's going to be jealous.
So they're going to Pat's going to do a song, and then the two of them together. And we're recreating the set for the Johnny Carson Tonight Show. So I ran up to Norfolk, which has the Elkhorn Valley Museum, which has a Johnny Carson wing.
Yeah, actually has a set there, right?
Yeah, it's neat. And so there's a replica of the multicolored curtains.
The velvet curtains.
I met the executive director, and she says, I have a backup set. Well, they're at our house now. We've ironed them, steamed them, so the backdrop when our two stars sing will be the Johnny Carson drapes.
Man, I might want to get on this action and rent those from you. We could do some fun with that for YouTube, you know?
So it's going to be a neat deal, and we hope folks will come out, particularly on the parade. Encourage the children, bring the children, and particularly grandchildren. We like to get grandparents involved to bring these kids. The way I say it, David, is this is one Saturday you can put your soccer shoes away, come downtown, hold a flag, and realize how lucky you are to be in America.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other country like it, bar none. And so sometimes we forget that, and I think it's great because, last year the weather was absolutely perfect for it. And again, Chip has been kind of emceeing, the parade.
That's right. He and Mike Schuler are going to be the MCs for the parade. They'll be set up near Hollywood Candy at 12th and Jackson.
It's always fun to go down there. And again, if you haven't been downtown since the waterfront expansion, everything done, this is a great opportunity to come down, support the parade. even spend some money at some of our shops and things downtown. So it's, Omaha is growing, which is fantastic to see because there's a lot of uncertainty out there in the economy, et cetera, right now. So I think this is a great day to remind people of how blessed we are. Even when things are rough here, you got it better than 99% of the people on the planet.
Well, quickly, I'll tell you, 4 years ago, we started the parade because much of the national media narrative at the time was what a horrible, hateful, racist country America is. Well, the vast majority of us don't believe that. We're the most diverse, generous people in the world. But our concern, we have 12 grandchildren, 12 and under. So our concern is young people get the message that they live in this terrible place. Well, it's not so. So when you see all the people on the street, as you said, with holding flags, all generations, it's heartwarming to see it.
Well, I think it's amazing. So if there's somebody out there that wants to get in touch with you for a future entrant, even if you're full up for this year, what should they do?
Go to patrioticproductions.org, send me a note, and we can visit. And there's still possibility we can get you in the parade. So
it's .org, not .com. So patrioticproductions.org. Parade again is going to be this Saturday, starting at 10 a.m.
Saturday the 23rd.
Not this Saturday, yeah.
24th. And then the Pat Boone and Margaret's the 23rd on Friday, and then Memorial Day.
All right, we are out of time for this segment again, so we'd love to see you guys down at the parade. We will be there. Chip and Mike Schutel from Retire Smart will be emceeing the event. I will be walking in it with several of our employees and family members. Hope to see you there. Chip, what do we have next?
Up next, you have questions. David Brooks has answers. Q&A is next on Retire Smart with David Brooks. Welcome back to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. Into the Q&A we go. Well, David, we made the big announcement last week that we are sponsors of Husker Athletics now, Retire Smart. So this question about income taxes hits us in a whole new way now. Income taxes and perhaps Big Red recruiting. Here's the question. I saw that Arkansas exempted from income tax name, image, and likeness deals, NIL deals, for college athletes. Won't schools in states with such an exemption or with no state income tax have an advantage in trying to land blue-chip recruits who are getting 6- or 7-figure NIL deals? Meanwhile, the Tennessee quarterback who left because he wanted a bigger NIL deal was a college student who needed more education and personal finance. It looks like he ended up in much worse shape financially. Am I right about that?
Okay. There's more than one question there.
Here. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So basically your taxed as income when you get these NIL deals, right? So as you, the recipient, this is income. You do have to claim it. You have to pay taxes on it. However, Arkansas literally singled this out, and so you won't pay state income. They'll still pay federal tax, but they won't pay state income tax there to give them basically at least a leg up. So that puts them on an equal playing field with about 10 states right now that don't charge income tax. And so, yeah, it can mean the difference. And so I think you'll see legislatures in the states that have a lot of schools will start to make that play, because Florida has multiple powerhouse, right, college programs. And so does Tennessee, and they are already income tax-free states, so they do have an advantage. So, and to the point of Nico, the quarterback that was at Tennessee, I forget his last name, right? But
Nico Iamaleava.
Yes, Iamaleava, and his younger brother's another highly touted recruit.
Yeah, he's good too.
But he was earning from what was reported about $3.5 million. Was trying to push that his dad from $4 to 4.2 is what he thought his value was. And he went to the people at Tennessee, and they said, "Sorry, that's not in the cards. We have other players." And so he decided to enter the transfer portal, and I think he thought maybe his value was a little higher, and he ended up signing, I believe it was UCLA out in California.
UCLA.
And he's got less than $1 million in guaranteed NIL. Now he'll get some side deals they guarantee. So I think he's going to end up with about $2 million or something from what I've read. Mm-hmm. But he now will pay a 13.3% state income tax to the state of California on those deals. So yeah, he ended up walking away with a whole lot less money in reality. The grass is not always greener, and don't make long-term decisions with short-term data.
Well, people lament usually, boy, college football, it seems more like pro football, like the NFL. I'm thinking of LeBron James in the NBA. Am I mentioning this, or 10 or 15 years ago when he left Cleveland, he came up with the Cleveland Cavaliers, he ended up going to the Miami Heat. I think part of the calculation was going to Florida Well, there's no state income tax.
That was a huge deal.
He's going to get a huge contract, and he didn't want to get whacked by taxes.
And at the time, if you remember, it was Chris Bosh, I believe, and Dwayne Wade. So he was like the third superstar to join that team. Not saying it guaranteed him a title, but it put him in the. I think the odds makers put it at over 37%. He would get a title within 3 years there, and they had a pretty good run. And sure enough, it was that was Miami buying some championships. But he did. He benefited financially, and once he had his championships cemented under his belt, what did he do? Didn't he go back to Cleveland for a while, and then he ended up going out to L.A. Right,
Yeah.
right, and so now he's just taking the back end deals at L.A. Lakers and has his son there again. But these guys are going to make decisions, and the dollar amounts are huge. I'm watching daily to see if our friend Brock Purdy gets his deal done with the San Francisco 49ers.
Yes.
And, we became Niners fans because my wife went to high school with Brock's dad, and so family friends. And so we kind of follow that. And he's about to sign somewhere in the neighborhood of $250 to $300 million long-term contract with probably close to $200 million of that will be guaranteed. But he's in San Francisco. He's in California. However, again, this is where you have to do tax planning. He doesn't play all the games there. So when he plays Nashville, guess what? He earned that money in Tennessee.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Absolutely,
so it's not
it's
subject
correct.
to California state income tax?
If he's playing away games, you want to be playing in Miami. You want to be playing in Tampa Bay, right? You want to be playing in the cities that have the Seattle, no state income tax,
I want
right?
to write my contract so that I'll play the home games for free. Pay me for all the road games and get all your money from the road games.
Here's the problem in the NBA. We found this out. Players didn't realize when they went up Toronto Raptors, right? You're in Canada. You're paying a whole lot more tax there than you realized, right?
Oh.
Same thing at NHL players. When they play their games in Canada, they have to pay Canadian taxes, which are, in the 50%.
goodness.
Anyway, so there's a lot to this stuff,
head's
and
spinning.
absolutely kids need to be educated on the taxation of these issues and stop just chasing the dollar, because I think NIL dollars are, if you play your whole career successfully in one college town, especially something like Nebraska, you can come back here, open restaurants here. You can get NIL deals, so to speak, for life, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, and just to finish up on that point, usually we're worried about creating the right tax environment for business investment and so forth. Hey, state legislature, make sure you don't hamstring the recruiting for Husker athletics as well. All right. David, here's the question I referenced at the beginning of the show. So we got a question about the possible impact from the Vatican, the doings at the Vatican last week. Does the election of a new pope impact financial markets?
It actually does. Now, it just depends on some of the rhetoric that came out. Like the previous pope was pretty hardcore on the socialist side of things and made that very evident in his speeches. This gentleman has actually stood at a pulpit and talked about anti-socialism because it's bad. He knows that he's given speeches where capitalism, Pope Leo, capitalism actually benefits society and get more people are raised out of poverty. Now, he does talk about, going almost back to the paraphrasing George Bush, the Jr., compassionate conservatism kind of way of doing it and what have you. But I'm just curious if the bigger impact is, are you going to have deep dish pizza when you go to Rome now versus thin crust?
Again, Chicago's on a roll lately. The name that he took, Leo, harkens back to Leo. He's Leo the 14th. Leo the 13th in the late 1800s wrote an encyclical called Rerum Novarum on new things. It was a pushback against socialism and communism, which were gaining ground in Europe. Karl Marx, Communist Manifesto, I think that was 1848, and it was gained momentum since then. And he made it very clear, no, it's a violation of natural law, these totalitarian doctrines that are being pushed, private property rights and so forth, that is part of natural law. That is sacred, And so some people took that as a hint that, maybe this pope will navigate a little back toward the right when it comes to economic policy.
Well, that, and you take Italy's leader now. She is a pretty capitalistic person as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what we see out of Rome, et cetera. I think you are definitely going to see a shift, though.
All right. I love it, David, when we get a question that reflects close listenership. So the question is about life insurance, and here it is. Please settle a dispute I have with someone who listens to you regularly. He tried to tell me that you say a person should not own his or her life insurance policy. I wasn't having it. That doesn't make sense. Of course, I own a policy that covers my death, so the benefits go where I want them to go. What am I missing here? Well, David, I've heard you say it enough times that it is true. You do say generally you should not own your life insurance policy. Take us through that again.
Yeah, all right. So you need to understand life insurance, the death benefit will pay out to your beneficiary, whoever you've listed, spouse, children, or anyone else, tax-free. So I want to make sure you understand that. However, depending upon where you live and your asset level, the death benefit is calculated as part of your estate. So here in Nebraska, we're one of 6 states that still has an inheritance tax. Now, we do not currently put that inheritance tax on the death benefit, but there are states that do, okay? And federally, it is calculated as part of your estate tax. Now, as we sit and record this today, a person can exempt basically $14 million in assets when they pass without having to worry about the estate tax, but it's 40 cents on the dollar once we go past that. So family farmers, think about that. If you have a family farm, 640 acres today, and it's worth $8.5–9 million, and you're around another 30 years, that's going to be worth $20 million when you pass. Under current law, the exemption drops to $5 million, inflation adjusted next year in 2026. That's what the law says. Now, again, we'll see if it gets extended or not. But inflation adjusted, it's estimated to be just under $7 million by most economists. So if you could only exempt $7 million and your estate was worth $20 million, you're going to pay a 40% tax or even higher. It's up to 55% on the balance at $13 million. So that's $7 million in estate tax that's due 9 months to the day after you pass.
What can we do about this?
Well, so if you had $1 million life insurance policy, that $1 million death benefit is also calculated as part of that discussion, and you would give up half the death benefit, in other words, to the estate tax. So you can simply create a trust. It's very simple to do. It's called an ILIT.
Irrevocable Life Insurance Trust?
Yeah, ILIT, Irrevocable Life Insurance. It just changing the ownership of the policy to an irrevocable trust that is no longer now part of your estate. Therefore, when you pass, that death benefit still pays tax-free to your beneficiary, but it's not calculated part of your estate or inheritance taxes if you live in the wrong state. Again, it's a simple thing to do that can save you a lot of pain. Now, primarily, yes, I joke about it. You should never own it. But in reality, if somebody's out there buying their first term policy to pay off the mortgage, you're probably not having to worry about this. But the idea is when I say things, it's to do this, just that, get the listener's attention. Wait a minute, there's something I don't know here. And plan accordingly, because the legislative bodies can change these things. And if you put things in an irrevocable trust, they can't call it back, even through legislative changes. You are protected from this day forward. So it's an important topic.
Up next, what does it mean when yields in the bond market and oil market get out of sync, and why does it matter to you? We'll tell you why next on Retire Smart with David Brooks. Welcome back to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. Well, David, I can see in this chart that you sent around to the team that yields in the bond market and yields in the oil market generally seem to track each other, but a huge disparity has developed in the last month or two. And what does that mean?
Yeah, so typically, you can correlate things together. When oil prices are rising, that usually means the economy is growing, right? So demand is growing, so therefore oil starts to go up, and you pay more at the pump, right? That's just, and it doesn't rip higher. It just kind of gradually goes higher over the course of months, right? The economy's heating up. If the economy's heating up, interest rates are usually heating up as well, paying slightly higher interest rates. The Fed might be in raising mode because they're trying to tame inflation. So if interest rates go higher, in theory, that would start to slow demand. And then when demand does roll over, you see oil prices fall, right? So when demand is less, oil prices fall down. When demand is less, usually interest rates fall. Well, which one's telling the truth? Because as you said, for the last, foreseeable near future here, oil prices have been falling like a rock, right? Got all the way down to $55 a barrel. I think it's back in the low 60s as we record this today. But yields are ripping higher, right? The 30-year yield is basically back almost at 5%. So interest rates are going up, oil prices are going down. Who's correct? Well, interest rates are telling you inflation is a very real problem. Oil's telling you deflation is a very real problem and demand is the problem we should be looking at. So can I tell you with certainty which one's correct? No, but one of them is going to correct the other. Everything reverts to the mean. That's why we look at correlation charts like this. This is really important to understand. I believe oil is probably closer to the real, and you'll see interest rates fade, but just not till later this year. The reason interest rates are up so much has a lot to do with the tariff tantrum and the fear that these tariffs will cause inflation. Well, as we're seeing, the deals kind of get knocked down now, UK, among others, China, et cetera. If they are real, in fact, and yields start to soften and go down, then that would tell me that we're probably looking for a slowdown, and then the Fed's going to start to cut rates, a little bit later than Trump currently wants.
So the bond yield, more likely, is going to be the one that moves and moves downward.
I think oil can certainly rebound some, but I don't see oil going back anytime soon to $85, $90 a barrel. It may not hold down in the sub 60 level either. That gets to the point where it gets kind of spooky for those producing it. Their margins get squeezed, et cetera.
Well, here's another one of those grassroots economic indicators. Auto loans not doing so well, David.
Yeah, well, the
delinquency rate is what the graph is showing. And
used car prices started to pop up here again because of the tariff tantrum. But used car prices, if you remember, during COVID went crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Right? There was supply, and then we had some bad weather that ruined some cars, flooding, et cetera. So used car prices went almost parabolic. My poor son, he happened to have his car get totaled at the exact wrong time. And when he had to replace the car, it was about a $7,000 loss from what he got from the car versus buying a comparable car because the used prices went up
twice as much to get one.
It was bad.
To get something comparable.
And so used car prices faded, came back down here. Finally, they're starting to rise again on the tariff thing. But we're seeing delinquencies now on the loans that went on those cars. Financing those cars is starting to creep up to pretty high levels we haven't seen in a long, long time. We talked about credit cards, I think, last week, hitting all record highs of people making minimum payments. Now you're seeing auto loans start to roll. These are signs that tell us oil, maybe in that previous chart, was telling us the right direction, that demand is slowing and the consumer is running out of steam.
David, those watching on YouTube can see this next graphic. It's about U.S. excess savings, and there is a steady, about a 45-degree downward trend in savings. And your contention is that's another sign of the stimulus money drying up?
Yeah, the government panicked, and it seems to be the playbook of all elected officials now. When something happens, the proverbial, hits the fan, so to speak. Let's send out some money. Well,
throw money at it.
It'd be one thing if you had money,
then the money hits the
sitting
fan.
in the vault that you're handing out something you already had. But no, they had to create this money out of thin air. We printed money, and we did. And again, this was Republicans and Democrats. They all voted for it. You had Trump sign bills, Biden sign bills, but we sent out over $5.7 trillion in less than 24 months mainly through the stimulus checks. There were 3 rounds of that, through enhanced child tax credits, PPP loans, and there was so much waste, fraud, and abuse in there as we're uncovering now. It's ridiculous. But those checks kind of gave people, and credit card numbers, by the way, we were talking about the delinquency rates last week. Credit cards got paid off at the fastest rate in history when that happened because people were flush with cash. You were getting these checks in the mail you didn't ask for. And again, this was the overreaction by Congress. Well, that created inflation, right? Inflation is created by M2 money supply. When you have all these dollars chasing the same amounts of goods, it's going to make prices rise. Well, we've worked off that the excess, and now we've run out of personal savings, and now the average American is negative on their personal savings, right? And they're having to charge their monthly supplies, right? You're having to use that credit card to just buy the necessities, and now you're not paying that credit card bill off. These are all bad signs for what's coming a couple of quarters out. Again, can we get some kind of tax bill actually finalized? We did, by the way, get the first version printed from the House Ways and Means Committee. They posted on their website last Friday. I've read through it, where they want to extend the tax cuts, et cetera. But this bill hasn't even got to the markup phase, so it's probably not even worth talking about yet on air because the chance of it coming out in its current form are slim and none. But again, lots of economic headwinds. Just because we announced some of these deals doesn't mean the economy's all in the clear yet.
David, we have about a minute for this one, but you sent it to me right before we sat down to do this show. A headline from townhall.com. Labor Department admits hundreds of thousands of Biden jobs were fake. I'm just going to read the first sentence. The Biden administration claimed to have added almost 400,000 jobs from July through September of last year, but new data released this week suggests none of those jobs ever existed. Now, I guess this is spilled milk now. I mean, this is over and done with, water under the bridge, pick your favorite cliche. But it still matters, David, in that we have to be able to believe the data coming out of supposedly neutral government agencies to make proper economic forecasts and calculations.
Yeah, I need to rely on this data. I've done this for a long time, quarter of a century, because we go to the government agencies, we pull down the data from all these various agencies and use it to make, our modeling, predictive modeling of what's happening on the macro side of the economy, right? On the broader stroke. And then it's not just us that called this out a while back, right? First Trust, Brian Westbury, a nationally recognized economist, one of the best out there, called it. We've had multiple folks actually say, okay, this is getting to the point we cannot trust the data. And now here they are admitting it. Oh, yeah, we lied. Oh, that was weird. You mean just the 90 days prior to the election, you might have fabricated some numbers? That's weird, Chip.
Well,
look, again, not a good sign. If those jobs weren't here, again, that tells you why the credit card numbers, the auto loans, all those things we just talked about are coming to fruition. Has nothing to do with the tariff tantrum that some people are now going to blame the downside of the economy on.
that'll do it for this week, folks. Please visit our website, retiresmartnow.com, and click Attend an Event at the top of the page to see everything we currently offer. No charge, no obligation for our events, but you do need to register. You can do that online or by calling 402-369-7777. David, bring us home.
Folks, have a blessed and prosperous week, and I hope to see you out at the Memorial Day Parade. Come join us for all the fun.
Thank you for listening to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. For David Brooks and the entire team at Retire Smart, have a great week.